I ran for mayor on an affordability agenda because we know that we cannot solve this crisis without reckoning with the fact that the neighborhoods hit hardest by rent and the rising nature of it, by childcare costs and the suffocating manner of it, are the same ones that have been hit for years by institutional neglect and racism.
So I never, ever want to hear about how this progressive Democrat doesn't wade into the culture war issues. They're focused on economic populism, lifting everyone up, and they set aside all the woke stuff that you say the Democratic Party is known for, that only the establishment types lean into in order to avoid it talking about economic populism. Because for a long time, people have tried to make the case, very disingenuously so, that Mamdani was one of these individuals. And by the way, they said the same thing about Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders said on the debate stage, if you're white, you don't know what it's like to be poor in the United States of America, which is absurd and ridiculous. But again, we see one of these candidates, Zohran Mamdani, just as expected by anyone who's paying attention, start talking about how evil white racism is the problem. New York City is founded on colonization and all sorts of bad white people buzzwords, and therefore we need to reorient all government programs in order to serve minorities rather than white people in the city of New York, because white people are bad, white people are racist, and white people just need to shut the hell up. It's absolutely embarrassing, it's ridiculous, and this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everyone who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And while today's true cost of living measure confirms that the affordability crisis touches every corner of our city, we know that these effects are not applied evenly. So often, it is black and brown New Yorkers who are hit the hardest. This preliminary racial equity plan is the first step in developing a whole-of-government approach to tackling that reality. It is a plan that lays out these first steps to solve decades of neglect and discrimination, and it places the work of 45 city agencies within a singular framework. Too often, the story of black and brown New Yorkers is one of being forced to stretch that same dollar that little bit further. Every year, as wages stagnate, as well as an exodus and exclusion continues to take place.
So as you just heard right there, Zohran Mamdani has announced that the city of New York has come up with their new real cost of living metric for the city, which ends up showing that the overwhelming majority of people in the city of New York, greater than 3 in 5 New Yorkers, cannot afford the cost of living in the city. And guess what? Non-whites affected the most. Non-whites are the worst off because the city has a long history, centuries long, according to Mamdani, of evil white racism and divestment from the poor black and brown communities in the city of New York.
Now, as we finalize this plan, we will continue to tackle our city's affordability crisis without turning away from the decades and frankly centuries of disinvestment in black and brown New Yorkers.
Now look, the cost of living in the city of New York is absolutely outrageous. It is out of control, and it definitely is unaffordable for many of the residents that live in the city of New York. And we on this channel have talked about the reasons why repeatedly, probably more than anyone else on the internet.com, before Mamdani was even a US citizen, before he was in government, before he was a blip on anyone's radar, and we actually address the real reasons for this. We don't blame evil white racism from the past. We actually talk about what's actually driving the cost of living, like excessive taxation. And we talked about the New York City income tax. It's one of the few cities in the entire nation with its own personal income tax, and how it kicks in at about $12,000 a year, and you're paying like 3% of your income on top of state income tax, on top of federal income tax, in again, your own city income tax, again at a very low point in terms of the income bracket. Now, Mamdani, of course, is in favor of raising these taxes, not lowering them. Now, progressives have lied to you throughout your whole life saying that the income tax isn't so bad. And by the way, if we got rid of it, you would just have to pay a high sales tax. You would just have to pay higher fines and fees, all these different regressive taxes. But if we have the income tax, you don't need to worry about that. And that's why Democrats, if you guys don't know, are better for the everyday working person, because even though you pay income tax, that's disproportionately on the rich. Therefore, you can just skimp out on your sales taxes and all the other things that those evil bad red states have, except for the fact that that's completely untrue. You know what New York City has? In addition to its city income tax on top of a state income tax, we have a city sales tax that is also stacked on top of the state sales tax. We also have exorbitant fines and fees. Again, park your car by a fire hydrant, you're going to be paying north of $150 for that ticket, because not only do you have to pay for the ticket, you also have to pay for the surcharge in order to pay for the ticket, because that's how wonderful New York City is. And in addition to that, they're now putting up 15-mile-per-hour speed cameras all over the city under Mamdani's watch in the name of safety for the children's near the school zones. But the fact is, this is revenue generation. So yeah, a huge part of the reason why New York City is unaffordable is because politicians in City Hall deliberately make the city unaffordable with exorbitant tax increases. And whenever you decide that you're going to notice that, whenever you get angry about that, whenever you want to call them out on their excessive spending, by the way, Mamdani trying to raise government spending in the city of New York to $127 billion over the next 2 years, a $14 billion increase in the city's budget, which is already insanely bloated. They end up saying, oh, actually, it's evil white racism. Just vote for us. We'll protect you from those evil bad white people who, by the way, aren't even a majority of the population in New York City anymore. So yeah, that is a major reason why. In addition to that, we also have the exorbitant regulations that make housing construction ridiculously expensive. So I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but one of the best ways to build affordable housing is to allow people to use cheaper material in order to build affordable housing. But New York City, they don't do that. In order to do electric wiring in one of these major buildings, you actually have to not only use regular cables, but you have to wrap them in these like metal casings that are prohibitively expensive in order to do so. You can't use PVC piping in order to make that process cheaper. And by the way, PVC piping, easy to repair if things go wrong. And by the way, many houses have PVC piping without any issue at all whatsoever. You actually have to use metal piping, and you have to use union contracts, and you have to use a bunch of different other materials that again are more expensive. And by the way, it is deliberate that they're making you use these more expensive materials in order to build any kind of project. And by the way, despite Mamdani's pledge to build affordable housing, if you look at his regulatory requirements, he's actually making it stricter, not easier, more difficult, more time to build, which again is going to raise the cost of building, because that's who this guy is through and through. So you end up with a situation where if you're going to build anything new, already from the jump, you're looking at about $80,000 in terms of increased costs in order to get all the permits, in order to secure everything. And that's if everything goes well. That's if you don't happen to be building something that runs up against a height restriction or some other arbitrary restriction that is in the city of New York. When you start to do that and you try to build more units, guess what? The costs end up raising proportionately, which is the exact 100% opposite of what's supposed to happen when you build in bulk, but that is what is built into the city of New York. But Mamdani has decided that not only are we going to look at all of that and keep it in place, strengthen it, as he says, because, you know, safety first, or some other stupid ass justification. By the way, he wants to guarantee union wage, prevailing wage for all these different projects. Just look at his campaign materials. Just look at everything that he's done since he's been in office. But in addition to that, we're going to add in some racial equity requirements, because if you're a white person and they actually ever do build affordable housing that is going to lose money but will be affordable for the time being, you shouldn't have access to it, because guess what? If you're a white person, you're richer in the city of New York, because on average, the net worth of a white person is higher in the city of New York than a black or brown person. Now, of course, we understand, most of us who are logical, that a lot of white people own homes in Staten Island or in Queens, and one need only look at Zillow or Redfin or any of these housing sites to look at what's available in terms of stock, and then you look at the previously sold prices to figure out that these homes were bought for really cheap, like 10 to 15 years ago. We're talking 100 to 200K, which might be expensive in your city, but by New York standards, not that expensive at all. And now they've ballooned to over $1 million in value, and this is what Mamdani is calling the household wealth, even though, again, this is not liquid wealth. This is not money for them to spend. They just happen to be here before. I know white people are being pushed out of the city. Their population is reducing, but some of them ended up buying homes for cheap, and due to the restrictions on building, the constraints on supply, prices ended up going up dramatically. And by the way, all these different programs that subsidize demand, which Mamdani wants more of, not less of, let's be clear about that. So yeah, these people have this wealth, but this wealth is just them buying a property in 1980 or 1990. It's not actually liquid cash.
This plan was born during a defining moment in our city's history, when New Yorkers were in the streets in the midst of a global pandemic, calling for justice, demanding accountability, and bearing witness to brutality unfolding on our streets and on our screens. In that moment, our city was asked to reckon with the deep systemic inequities that have long shaped life here and to do better. New Yorkers across all 5 boroughs answered that call. Their voices, their advocacy, and their persistence are what brought us to this moment. The release of the preliminary citywide racial equity plan is a reflection of that collective mandate. It is not just a document, it is a commitment to confront institutional and systemic racism within our city and to begin the work of dismantling it. This effort represents collaboration across New York City government. 45 agencies and more than 200 public servants came together with a shared purpose to build a more equitable, inclusive, and just city.
I mean, the irony of this guy, Zohran Mamdani, somebody who is part ethnically Indian, who had his family in Uganda, which is where he gets his Ugandan half, talking about the drivers and the wealthy people that have made New York City unlivable, when he's exactly a perfect example of that, is absurd and ridiculous. The guy has a bunch of property. Remember, he had 3 different weddings, one in Dubai, one on a compound that his family owns, and I forgot what the third one was, but it was somewhere also lavish, if I do recall. And yeah, this guy is the exact kind of person that drives up the cost of New York City because his wealthy parents paid for him to come over here, sent him to really expensive private schools, and again, they're the ones that are living in these high-end apartments and whatnot, and again, demanding all these different luxuries for themselves while always talking about the poors at their cocktail parties. So yeah, Mamdani, absolute nothing in terms of the actual solution to this problem, but again, it's more culture war stuff, more race communism, and it's absolutely embarrassing. But then again, socialism is the ideology of the rich, wealthy, disconnected people, the Nepo babies like Mamdani, so we should not be surprised by that.
The median household wealth for white New Yorkers in this city is $276,000. For black New Yorkers, it's $18,000. The disparities that we're seeing within this city. And I think as the public advocate put it very well, which is that we are here to fight for each and every New Yorker, and that these statistics are not an indictment of anyone who calls this city home. They are an indictment of policies, politics, and a system that we have allowed to flourish for far too long. And so what this report is a reminder to all of us to do is to build a city where equity is not a footnote or an acknowledgement, but is also a framework for how we deliver for the people of the city.
Look, I'm not somebody who hates transplants to New York City. Make no mistake about it. People moving into your city is a good thing. It shows that there's economic opportunity in your city. But when people do talk about transplants that they absolutely cannot stand, it's this guy right here. It's Zohran Mamdani. Him, a rich kid from a rich family. His mom was a Hollywood director, put him in Disney movies, by the way, coming to New York City, going to private schools, and now riding his bike in these stupid ass bike lanes to lecture us about all the different things that we need to do better by his own standards, while at the same time playing the victim because he happens to be a brown. Like, it's ridiculous. Enough of this nonsense. And again, this is exactly what you get when you vote for somebody because you found him appealing due to his performative third worldisms, like eating rice with his hands. But in reality, the signs were there all along. Remember, he put that Sia Weaver chick in charge of the tenant review board or something of the sort, and that Sia Weaver chick had repeatedly said that her goal in life was to impoverish the white middle class, to target them, strip them of their private property, because these people are communists, these people are losers, these people are the worst of the worst, and again, they're obsessed with identity, despite the fact that people in the media will tell you, no, it's economic populism. No, it's absolutely not. They are communists. And by the way, that includes race communism and gender communism. And they show us that each and every day. Now, of course, there was one funny line throughout this press conference where Mamdani said that he likes biology students because he doesn't know anything about biology.
And the 900 students who are studying to be biologists, they're deeply needed because I am a mayor who has very little knowledge of biology.
And yeah, that's true. This is a guy who doesn't know what a woman is, or when he's asked, pretends that he doesn't know what a woman is. So that is an ironically funny clip to come out of this. But also, post this little press conference, he ended up getting confronted by a reporter, and that reporter asked him about how he took out phrases like DEI from his entire presentation, even though, again, they suggest programs like housing and whatnot that advantage minorities over white people in the same position. So DEI programs, anti-white programs. And Mamdani blames Eric Adams and says, oh, he didn't release the report and whatnot.
All right, we'll take some off topics as well. Dana, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. There's a report in City and State today about how your administration removed DEI language from the racial equity report that you released this week. Why was that decision made, and do you support that decision?
So I want to be very clear. Our administration inherited a report that the prior administration had refused to release, a report that had been heavily diluted over many rounds of revisions. We took the time to strengthen this report to ensure that it was actually an accurate reflection of the city that we all love and know as our home, and to actually release this report within the first 100 days. Now, in this report, what we've seen, it's a report that is both coupled with a true cost of living report, is that the inequities in this city, the racial inequities, are stark. We are talking about findings that have shown that the wealth of a median white household in the city is more than $200,000, while that of a black household is less than $20,000. This is not an indictment of any one New Yorker. It is an indictment, however, of policies and politics that have persisted for far too long.
But in reality, the reason they took that language out is so that they don't set off people in the Trump administration who are looking to cut off funding to locations based on DEI, and they think removing the language and keeping the same exact anti-white policies will be sufficient in order to avoid scrutiny, which, by the way, is a Mamdani staple because this is a guy who said he was in favor of defunding the police 40 times. He said it in an interview as well.
Are you for defunding the police? Are you for a serious reform that people can see on the ground?
I am in favor of defunding the police.
But when he was campaigning and that slogan had fallen out of favor with everyone, he decided to advocate for defunding the police in all but name, and that somehow allowed him to skate through to become the mayor of the city of New York to implement the same exact agenda. And by the way, it is remarkably similar to what Abigail Spanberger is proposing over in Virginia, somebody who pretended to be a moderate, because guess what? All of this anti-white DEI stuff, this is a thing among the Democratic Party. It is a feature. It's something that they're all on board with. Make no mistake about it. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about all these different agencies that are going to be focused on race communism and bringing everybody down to the same level. Are you surprised by this, or are you paying attention even a little bit? And again, I want you guys to tell me about the cost of living in the city of New York and what you think is actually driving it. Is it colonization? Is it evil white racism? Is it white people buying a house in 1985 and that house going up in value? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Zohran Mamdani, proving once again that they're all into this DEI crap. Till next time.